Adam, our resident immigrant, is going to help us understand what's going on with rugby all over the world.
And we're going to talk a bit about immigrants today.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Qualifications, so that actually fits pretty well.
What makes an immigrant, or why we get snarky about immigrants? I don't know.
Why we like them or we don't like them.
Exactly.
We like them though.
Do we like them?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Let's
not get political about this.
We're starting about the USA national team. They're going to go and play 2 games, Germany, Georgia. And we saw the list to play Germany. Interesting. I don't know, Michael, do we have that list up on the screen? Yeah.
We got that right here.
There you go. 28 players, a bunch of guys we all know.
So what do you reckon? What's initial thoughts? How many of these from actually play in the US?
Like half of them.
Okay.
And the guys who are playing overseas, most of them are U.S. born, U.S. developed players. But we do get these guys who are like, nobody's ever heard of them in American rugby circles, and then suddenly, hey, his mom's American, or for some reason, I mean, like my own circumstances, my parents are American, but I was born in England because my parents happened to be there.
So have you ever got the call up for the Eagles?
You're
waiting for England.
Yeah, I was
Eddie
waiting for
Jones.
England. Right, that's right.
Hey, there's some injuries, in the UK at the moment, so he's going to be calling soon.
Yeah, you never know. I am qualified. Also qualified for France and Armenia.
Well, you might have a better chance of Armenia.
Armenia, maybe I should.
You could start a rugby team in Armenia and go play for it. You could be captain and coach.
I actually know a bunch of Armenian American rugby players. Some pretty good guys. Kasigian family, pretty good one. But the issue is, you get this guy, Paddy Ryan, Marcel Brach, Brachi, I think is how you pronounce his name, and we haven't heard of them. And suddenly they show up, and I don't know how you feel about it. I hold these guys to a pretty high standard. I mean, if somebody shows up and I've never seen him, and he's lazy or he's slow or he makes a boneheaded move, I'm not going to forgive that as quickly as, say, some 20-year-old American shows up and is a little bit starstruck. I'll give him a mulligan.
Yeah, I mean, it's this. Every nation comes across this. Even England, Ben Teo, various other players, not actually from England. So I think it's good for the US. I mean, at the end of the day, at the moment, where Tier 2 nations are and where the domestic level is, I think it's really important to bring in people who are qualified from elsewhere. I mean, even the CEO of the Pro 14 said at the moment, if there's going to be a Pro 14 team in the US, it's going to be full of people from overseas until slowly they have an influence, slowly they can, the domestic level teams and players catch up. So I think it's a good thing, but you've got to have a balance, right? So you've got to be developing that young talent, you've got to be giving them the opportunities. But then if you can bring in some maturity and some experience from elsewhere, then I haven't got a problem with it. I mean, some people do.
People overseas sometimes talk to me and they'll say, why do you guys care so much? Why are you all like, are these Americans or are they quasi-Americans? And
what is an American?
What is an American? And I've said it a few times. Chris Wilds is about as patriotic an eagle as you've ever.
But he's lived in the UK since what?
Exactly.
11 or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he threw himself into it. There have been other players who show up to get like a cap or put themselves in some kind of negotiating position.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because what you're going to get, especially if the MLR starts up, you get a professional league in the US, you're going to get a lot of players that come over here because they can't make it in South Africa, in Australia, in England, wherever it is, and they want to play for the Eagles. They want to play international rugby. Why not? They want to play for in a World Cup, and so they'll move over and they'll play for one of the MLR teams with the hope of becoming qualified in 5 years. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's been on the Eagles the whole time. It doesn't bother me on a club level. It doesn't bother me on a college level. I get these things all the time saying that they've got all these overseas students. Well, that's actually American colleges in any discipline. You look at math departments; they got a lot of foreign students. But on the Eagles, it kind of bugs me.
Yeah.
It kind of bugs me in a certain level is that you'll say, all right, let's get a guy, and he's from overseas, and he's going to raise the level. Fine, but why are they always fly halves? And why is it? I mean, on the club level, some guy shows up and he's shaped like me and he's got gray hair like me, and he goes, "Well, I'm a fly half," and it's like, "No, you're not.
I reckon there's actually a reason for that though, because the hardest thing to teach is give people the rugby brain, right?
Yeah.
And the instincts that you've had. Dan Payne talked about this a lot recently, in that the USA has to get people playing rugby younger, because you can get all these athletes who've never played. They can go in and play at flanker, not at 7 maybe, but at 6. They can go in and play at certain positions because you're battering ram at 12, whatever. But to actually play fly half, or to play some of the positions that are, you've got to learn over time. That's where you're going to get more people coming in who've been playing since 4 or 5 years old, rather than playing since 15 years old, and that they're going to clearly have more experience and probably, in a lot of cases, be better. That
decision making, and that makes sense. I guess. Then on the other side, I can get ticked off if somebody shows up and he's a 6 or a 7. I said, hey, we got those.
Yeah, we
got those. Spilling over the walls. Oh, I said we weren't going to get political talking about walls. The funny thing is, you and I are talking about this, is that other countries look at it differently.
Yeah.
So we're really excited because half of these teams are playing pro overseas and not playing domestically. It's like, yay, right? Nick Savetta.
Well, this is where the interesting thing comes with Tier 1 and Tier 2.
Yeah.
The Welsh guys just put in this policy this week. If you play abroad, you can't play for Wales unless you've got 60 caps.
Yeah.
Then you can go do it. There's a lot, so that's very controversial. England, you can't play an England team if you play abroad. New Zealand, Australia, you used to not be able to. Now, if you've got 60 caps, you can. So, all these teams, these Tier 1 teams, of course they want to protect their domestic leagues. Like, of course, because that's how that's how they develop money in the game as much as anything, and talent. But for a Tier 2 nation, it's actually the opposite, really. Like right now, you are way better off having Chris Bowman and TT and these guys playing in the Premiership than they would be playing in the MLR.
Oh, sure.
Or if that existed, or Pro, or whatever it was right now. Of course, because they're playing under the best coaches in the world. They're playing with the best players. So actually, it's the opposite. You want as many of the Eagles as possible playing in foreign leagues. But what is that? That's the balance. Like, how does that affect the domestic one?
A lot of them don't even play. I mean, sometimes they're just in the full-time training environment. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of David Tamalau on the field. That's okay if he's training regularly. Okay. We're good with that.
You've got to get game time though as well. But with the A-League
nice.
And second teams and stuff, and playing in even the championship in the UK or in D2 in France, whatever. These leagues are well established with quality players in them, and they're going to get hardened as well.
Right. But it's a big payoff. I mean, it's been even before, like in the pre-pro years, like going to France was your big payoff. You've been playing for years, and it's like the food's going to be better, the weather's going to be better, and there was this sort of little under the table stuff before the professional rugby started. But now you're a New Zealander, you've got like 30 caps and you're pretty much done, but you want to get your few years in France.
Why wouldn't you want to go earn a load of money, eat red wine and cheese, and live in the south of France? Like, I mean,
it's pretty sweet.
It's not a terrible deal, is it?
Sweet, yeah.
And those, if you go play in Toulon and these places, they care so much about rugby. The whole towns, everyone knows you. You're a celebrity, but boundaries are kept. So, I think it's a big thing. But the other thing I think for US players and any Tier 2 nation is that it's a great way to recruit too. So being able to say to young guys, "Hey, come play rugby. Don't forget about NFL. Forget about that stuff. Come play rugby, because actually rugby can take you around the world." Right?
Yeah, sure.
Rugby can take you to France, Japan, New Zealand, wherever it is, and you can travel around the world, and you're going to get to see the world. Now, I think that's a big, I think Todd talked about that a little bit, Todd Clever. I think that was a big attractor to guys who, when you're trying to compete against the big 4 sports in the US. So I think it's a good thing if we can show people to go and do that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an aspiration.
Anybody who's had that experience, and the tour is just still a classic part of it. The French, though, they're causing us problems in sometimes allowing players to be released for the national team, where although Chris Bowman's not on this list and he's not available for selection, he's at Leicester in the UK, but Samu Manoa is on there, pretty excited. Mike, I don't know how many times Samu Manoa has been playing for the Eagles the last year and a half. It doesn't seem like it's a lot. Do you know? I mean, you look that up, but.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay, he's going to work on it. Because the Eagles have played like 15, 18 games, if you count non-test games, in the last since the beginning of 2016. They played the Maori in Argentina as well, but and Manoa's played what?
2.
2
games. So what's better for him,
games.
playing 2 games for the Eagles, better for his development, or playing 2 games in the top 14? Like for his development.
Well,
what's better for the World Cup?
Speaking as someone who writes about the Eagles stuff, I don't care. At this point, I say we've got to get our best team every time to play. And Samu Manoa, one of the best players out there, one of the most exciting players, big star. Why can't we have him play? Now, he was injured. I know that. I know he played against the Maori, which probably is not on your list, Mike, but come on, we got to have him more available.
Well, it's hard to get some, get that chemistry between the team and get that continuity, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just we're talking to people and they're saying, well, I don't know if that guy's going to be available. Shouldn't they make him available? Well, the rules say yeah.
Yeah,
but
is that also because they've only picked the squad for Germany, right? They haven't picked it for Georgia at the moment, which is kind of a different way of doing things. So hoping that someone like Bauman might be able to play the Georgia game, which would be great.
And we might lose Savetta or something like that.
Right, yeah, and maybe someone else comes back. But I think Bauman doesn't surprise me because there's an injury crisis in the Aviva Premiership.
That's what it is.
Those players are getting the top players are getting pulled up, and they've signed him. So when the England players go off, or the Welsh and the French or whatever from Leicester, they've got someone to back him up who's a quality player. So then if he goes as well.
That's it. I mean, they basically came to him and said, you're going to put us in a bind. Yeah. And his contract is probably like 6 months.
Right.
So,
and also he wants to make it at Leicester, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if he doesn't play, say he gets an opportunity to play during the internationals, and he has a great performance, then he works his way into the team. If he goes off and plays international, comes back at the same time as the other players coming back, then he's not going to get that chance. And that's where you see young players often get their chance and then get into the first team, is when they get the opportunity to step up during the international breaks.
That's what Manoa did in 2011, skipped the World Cup to play for Northampton, became a big star. Yeah, I want to talk about the injury thing, but you mentioned something else that I thought was interesting about player, what country you play for and who you declare for and something like that. And you're ineligible if you're playing outside your country, and we're trying to get people who have played, played professional, but qualify for the United States, even if they live in South Africa, whatever. Fans, if you don't know this, the World Rugby rule is, if you play at a certain international level for a country, that's it. That's your country. Unless you want to play in the Olympics, they let you switch. But if you play for USA Selects, or if you play for the USA Sevens team or the USA 15s team, one time, and you also qualify for France, tough. You can only play for the USA for the rest of your life. So in rugby league, they don't do it that way.
This is interesting because obviously the Rugby League World Cup starts this week. Tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With England,
Australia, right? They hate each other.
Massive game. So that's in Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand. But it was interesting to see their qualification thing is quite different, and it's a different game, right? So there's 3 Tier 1 nations: Australia, New Zealand, and England. If you can qualify for a Tier 1 nation, but then you can also put that if you qualify for a Tier 2 as well. So you have some grandfather from Tonga, Armenia, whatever it is, you can put that as your second team essentially. Now, if you don't get selected for the first team for the World Cup, you can get selected for the second team, and that's the law that's supposed to happen. What's happened has been really interesting is that I think 8 or quite a lot of New Zealand players and at least 1 or 2 Australian players who actually, I think a few of them that got selected for Australia and New Zealand actually decided to go and play for Tonga instead, which seems to be against the rules, but no one seems to have done anything about it.
Interesting.
So these guys have gone off and defected, apparently with no reason other than they just want to play for Tonga.
Patriotism?
Yeah, I mean, it could be great for. It could bring in, if Tonga becomes suddenly a serious team. They're like down the rankings at the moment. They've got a lot of New Zealand, Australian players. playing for them, then suddenly you could have another Tier 1 nation.
Mike, you think that Tonga's going to shell out the big bucks to get those guys out of the deal?
That's just a question, right? Yeah. It would make sense that the higher ranked team would pay more, but that's who knows, right?
Well, they pool all their money for 5 or 6 or 8 guys and say, hey,
right.
I don't know if I'm picked for Australia and I'm looking saying, no, I'm pretty still that's exciting, but I'm down the depth chart. I'm not going to see a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, in rugby union, the finances of places like Tonga and Samoa are always in question. So I'm surprised if it was the same rugby league.
It's weird. Rugby league is odd. You'll see Lebanon in there. There's a very big Lebanon Australian community in Australia. So a lot of guys who have Lebanese heritage just put together a team.
I don't know how freakish. Lebanon. I mean, they actually ranked like 21 or something, or right down the rankings, and they managed to get in the World Cup. So fair play to them. But it will be I mean, rugby league's interesting because I think it's growing in the US. It's growing in places like Canada. We had Toronto Wolfpack this last year.
Crazy.
Playing in an English like Tier 3 league for rugby league against like really random teams, but professionally. Yeah. And so they were flying back and forth, and they were paying for all the flights of the teams coming over as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
There's no money in rugby league in the UK.
No.
Right? So they were paying for all the teams to fly over to Toronto every time and play, and they won the league and they got promoted.
Yeah.
And what was more impressive, because okay, they won the league, they've got a full-time team, whereas the guys in the UK are semi-pro mainly.
Yeah.
So, okay, you can see why they maybe won. But also, from what I've seen, like the attendances and stuff in Toronto are pretty impressive. Like, for rugby league in Canada, like, 5 to 10,000 people watching the games at the stadium, which is similar to the Union games. So, it's interesting.
Got to get a good venue. It's like, okay, so Canada Rugby League World Cup is actually going to be shown live on FloRugby for Canadian fans, for fans in Asia, except for a couple of countries, and also in Uruguay and Chile. It's pretty cool. If you know someone who's stuck in a hotel in Guangzhou or Mumbai or Tashkent, because we all take a trip to Tashkent and want to see some rugby league, let them know FloRugby is going to be showing those, like 16 games.
16 games, yeah. I mean, we're doing round 2, I think.
Round 2.
Onwards, pretty much all
knockout
the games
rounds,
from then on.
Semi-final, final, whole big thing like that.
It's the most exciting Rugby League World Cup for, probably ever, right? Because of what's going on in Rugby League right now around the world. It's going to be interesting being in hosting 3 different countries. And you've got some hell of some athletes. Really
big, scary athletes. Tongans. Apparently Tonga's going to have a good team.
Well, if this Samoa versus Tonga game, I don't know what date that is.
I think that's first round.
That is,
right?
But you're just going to see massive men smashing into each other. Which, I mean, for an audience that is used to football both in Canada and the US, like, it's going to be interesting just because it's so much simpler than rugby union.
Yeah.
And
my dad used to watch a lot of rugby league back in the old days. Eddie Waring, do you remember Eddie Waring? Okay,
I do.
Shows my age, but we'd have American coworkers come and watch it, and then my dad would just say, like, take American football and take away the forward pass, and you pretty much have rugby league to start with. There's no blocking, but there's a lot of decoy running that's almost blocking. What you get is 6 possessions, 6 downs, 6 tackles to score. If you've been tackled 5 times and you're nowhere near scoring, well, you got to kick it, and that's pretty much the same philosophy around football. Really.
Yeah. No, it's an awesome game. It is.
A lot of running, a lot less emphasis on kicking, other than sort of the attack kick. Mm-hmm. If you're stuck in your own end and you've got the first possession, you're not going to kick it. You're going to run as far as you can.
I mean, we used to train a lot, do rugby league and practice and stuff for rugby union because the fitness as well, like tracking back in defence, going forward, tracking back. It's pretty impressive. That's why you've basically just got a bunch of 12s or flankers playing.
Yeah.
Not a huge amount of short round people or anything like that. They don't do so well in rugby league.
No, a lot of I think in Australia they do this. Teaching kids to play rugby, you start with rugby league. Yeah, because it takes the ruck out of it. It takes a bunch of the other things out of it. You tackle, you get up, you heel the ball back under your feet, and you're going again.
On rugby league, New York apparently has started a team as well So the whole point of Toronto is trying to get into the Super League in the UK. They're now one. They've been promoted to the one below that. They've seen that it's been successful for Toronto so far. Who knows how much money they have? I mean, essentially, it's until they run out of money, right? And then, but New York are apparently going to launch a team, which is going to be interesting.
You know, it's all about that whole thing about Pro 14 or Premiership or Super Rugby trying to plonk a U.S. team, a team in the United States. Nice, but you know, wow, that's hard. I mean, cross that. You got to cross. I realize the United States is just as wide as the Atlantic Ocean, and it's pretty much the same. But
yeah, I mean, New York to London is like 5 hours flight, right? But I mean, just the cost to do it is incredible. It'd be cool if there was a team there, but it's interesting. It'll be really interesting over the next couple of years to see, you know, the MLR taking off, and with Rugby League maybe starting a few North American teams, see which model works. Because from what I can tell, the Pro 14 Atlantic Cup thing isn't probably going to happen. So, but we'll still be able to see what works. Well, maybe, but I don't know.
It's hard. It's hard. Somebody has to have the will. Somebody has to jump into it.
Someone has to have the cash.
Yeah, a lot of cash, right? Right. You know, $10 million or something.
You know, Pro would have probably still going if he hadn't run out of cash. So, it's an interesting one. Anyway, so Rugby League World Cup this week.
Tell your friends.
Other international stuff. Autumn internationals starting, but Bledisloe Cup. Did you see anything to any of that with Australia, New Zealand?
I did see a little bit, right? I did see a little bit, and I think that you know, it put me in mind of the Ireland-New Zealand game in Chicago. Just the idea that you can start to think that New Zealand is invincible, and that people say winning is a habit, but getting kind of freaked out about a winner is a habit too. And more than any nation, I think, in World Rugby, Australia is really good at just throwing away the history book and saying, I don't care that we've lost to them 6 times in a row, whatever it is, let's just take them down. So,
yeah, I mean,
respect that.
I think the Bledisloe, I don't, is it always 3 games?
No, they change it all the time.
Yeah, I thought it was 2, but the third game was kind of, everyone kind of forgot about it because everything else had finished in the Rugby Championship, and it's like, oh, New Zealand, Australia playing. New Zealand smashed Australia in the first one.
Yeah.
And the second game was an incredible game, but New Zealand won. No one would have put money on Australia winning the third, but interesting to see the progression through the 3 games and get to a point where they actually won. So it is impressive. I mean, Israel Folau is just an absolute animal.
No, he's true.
He's incredible, but he's taking a break now as well, apparently.
Okay.
So I heard.
But I just like the attitude, and I like the attitude. You know, the 2015 World Cup final. I know New Zealand won it, but Australia. I just got the feeling Australia did not care. They did not care that the All Blacks were going to be anointed and they were going to get their second in a row, and this one was going to be better than the first one because they were a little lucky and all those things. And they just did not care and said, we're going to go play a rugby game. And I just love that about it.
Although it should have been Scotland.
Yeah, that's true.
I was at that game as well.
That's true. Oh, my God. Yeah, it should have been Scotland.
It should have been Scotland. That was probably the Scotland game was probably the best game I've ever been to, even though I'm not a Scottish fan. It was, the atmosphere was incredible. It was raining. Sat with the Scottish fans. Everyone wanted Scotland to win. And then Craig Joubert stepped up.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys with the whistle somehow seem to change things. So, I think they're blowing the whistle on this show. Actually, I think we've been penalized. We're running out of room and time. Mike, are we running out of time?
We got a couple minutes left.
We got a couple of minutes left. In which case, are we going to show that video?
Yeah, we got that.
Okay.
Oh, the French one.
Yes.
Okay.
Professional rugby players are becoming too big, too scary, and they're hurting themselves.
Yeah.
Look at this guy running with the ball out. Now, he's just innocuous tackle from a fly half, no less, but the guy's hip lands right on his...
Lopez, isn't it?
Lopez on his leg.
The funny thing, I mean, this is...
It's his Lawrence Taylor
so
moment.
rare this happens in rugby. There is loads of talk about injuries and stuff at the moment. Aviva Premiership is having a crisis. This very, very rarely happens. In fact, I reckon we see more of this in soccer, which I would call football, than we do. That's a classic sort of soccer.
That's a football injury
break,
too.
right?
We see where they grab him and take him down, and he's using his body to help bring him down. This is your Lawrence Taylor on Joe Theismann moment a little bit, but
he's out for 5 months.
The size of these guys landing on each other, the bones. I don't know. The bones don't seem to be getting bigger at the same rate that the muscles and everything else is getting bigger.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think biology works that way. No, definitely.
We'll have a biology lecture
people are getting
time.
heavier and the contacts. But yeah, that's brutal. He's out for 5 months, double fracture, which should be interesting because in the autumn internationals, France would have probably played him at fly half. So
There you go.
see where they end up. But the autumn internationals are coming up, so that's going to be exciting time. Obviously, Rugby League World Cup. There's loads of rugby happening.
Huge. Yeah.
We're going to have lots to talk about.
Yeah,
we haven't even got into stuff in the US today.
We're gonna see where it's always like, where do we stand, Southern Hemisphere versus Northern Hemisphere, and this is always the time when Southern Hemisphere teams go up and it's cold and rainy, and then there's a win, and then we say, well, is the balance changing?
Well, currently Australia are the best team in the world because they beat the best team in the world. So England are playing Australia in the autumn internationals. So if they win, they are officially the best team in the world.
I think that's how it works.
Definitely. Well,
are we done? We done, Michael?
We are out of time.
We're out of time. The missed pass. See you later.
Cheers.